Okay. Oh man, now I don't see. Oh, I do see you. Okay, cool. All right, now we're officially on. This is the first Skype recording session because Google Hangouts on air got canceled.
Very cool, man.
I think I see you cropped in. Let me see. Hold on. Let me adjust my window. No, actually, I think that's just my window size. But yeah, I think we're good. All right. So what's on your mind?
We were gonna talk about internships, right?
We're gonna talk about your videos.
Oh, okay. We can talk about my videos. Yeah. So I made a video yesterday and I made a video today. Two videos in a row. I wanted to do this for the longest time, but I've just been putting it off. I don't know. For me, it takes mental energy to do a solo video for whatever reason. Maybe for you, Phil, it's not as hard, but I don't
Yeah, so
know.
tell me about the difference. So I saw the first one, which is just a teaser. It was like a 1.5 minute teaser. That wasn't even that. I guess it qualifies the first video, but it was a teaser for the first video. It was just saying how you're working up to making a first video, and then you're like, I'm done.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, when I'm alone in a room, the self-editing voice in my head gets louder, and if I mess up once, I get frazzled and I just want to quit. I don't know.
So how
And
did you record it?
Camtasia.
Oh, you Camtasia on your laptop.
Yeah.
And how many times did you record?
Like 7 or
Oh
something.
my God, for a 1 minute thing.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think I don't think I'm unique though. I think a lot of people have hangups with seeing themselves on video. I
Yeah.
think talking to you, it's not as bad because this is just a conversation. But I think when you're by yourself, it's natural to self-edit or to get in your own way.
Yeah, that's really interesting because like, you know, I would have thought that you'd be more comfortable in front of the camera since we've done so many of these. You're so candid in front of these. It's funny because even the very first one we did, the first PG podcast, it was like half an hour, and it was you just talking about grad school and math papa or whatever, right? It was like the very first one. It
Yeah.
wasn't even the hour. It was just like you're one of the people on the podcast, or you're number 14 or 15 or whatever. And like I was yeah, I was pleasantly surprised that was your first time like really on camera, and you were just like letting it all go. You're just letting it all out from the first minute. Like it was just nonstop.
I think because it's a conversation, you can forget it's being recorded. But if you're recording yourself, I think that's a different challenge, or it can be. I guess somehow you got over that hump relatively easily, but I think for other people, it could be a challenge.
So you think that for people who are like, I understand for people who don't want to be on camera at all. I mean, like I understand people who don't want to be on camera and don't want to have it recorded and put on YouTube, and like that makes sense. But it's like
Yeah.
you already have so many hours of yourself on YouTube, saying all sorts of wild things already.
I think because if you record solo, you have the option to do it again.
Mm-mm.
Whereas here, it's live, so you're kind of stuck. And if you stumble, you just keep on going. But I think when I shoot a video, there's a temptation if there's one hiccup, then
Mm,
you just want to. It's kind of like when you play a video game and then you mess up.
yeah,
You want to hit the reset button. I think a lot of people have the urge to hit the reset button.
yeah.
But you maybe you don't relate at all. Like it's
No, I mean, like, I think there have been times where I've had false starts. Like when I've started for like a few seconds or a minute, I'm like, I'm not feeling this, and then I'll try again. But usually it's like one false start or something.
oh, okay.
Because I'm just like, all right, I just got to do this.
And how concrete is the idea before you record?
It should be like pretty concrete. Yeah. I don't
Okay.
think I'd ever want to record without like anything. Yeah, I
Okay.
wouldn't just want to turn the camera on with nothing. Yeah, I understand like if you're just like, okay, at 9 p.m. I have to go sit in a booth and record 5 minutes. That's kind of weird. But like, in that case, having someone else makes sense because you can play off of it. And it's like, all right, we're coming here, we don't really know what we're talking about. That's fine because there's two people. Um, yeah, go ahead.
Do you ever have the experience where you're explaining something and then you think about it and you want to edit what you just said, or does that not happen that often?
I guess like I mean, I think most of my videos are not like super technical, right? So like I don't think it requires a lot of like stuff to hold in my head, right? Like, yeah, if you're trying to explain something really complicated, then yeah, you'll have to hold a lot of state in your head and you probably mess up and then people probably edit or like, you know, like when I'm doing like coding demos and stuff, I usually plan it out and I don't actually do that many takes, but like I plan it out and then I might edit out like on Camtasia, right? If you're recording a screencast, I plan to edit it by trimming it down. So like for example, I'm typing and stuff. If I mess up, it's fine. I just like undo it, and then I just remember later just to cut out that part. And the nice thing
Mm-hmm.
about on screencast is that when you edit, it looks seamless, right? Because it's just your screen. So it looks like if you're typing and you backspace and you just edit out, it just looks like you never typed, right? So it's
Mm-mm-mm.
really seamless. And then if you have a good microphone and you like kind of practice, yeah, it's kind of like you can if you record with the intention of editing, that's not too bad. Like example, if I need to do a coding demo or a tutorial, you know, I just give myself the time to do it. I just do it. I just do it. I just do it. And then I can just trim down the parts that are really slow. And then sometimes if I'm stuck, I like, just wait for a bit and then do it again or whatever, right?
Mm-mm.
So like I have the intention of editing, but like I also like don't have the patience to do it that much either, right? Because like I gotta like usually for the coding demos, it's like for a class thing or whatever, and it's like, all right, this is the moment I just do it now. Like I'm not gonna get to it tomorrow. It's just like just so I think like the time urgency helps kind of push those things out.
Yeah, yeah. Similarly here, the urgency, because I said I would have a video ready before we talk next, and that's what got me over the hump. Because there were certain times when you start Camtasia, and then I feel like I have a false start, and then I don't even stop it. I say, okay, let me just rest, and then I'll go again. And then for whatever reason, if I'm in that loop, it
Oh
becomes
yeah,
a
that's
lot
over.
tougher. So I just stop. At some point, I have to stop, and I say,
Man,
okay,
you should just
hit
post the raw
start,
footage.
and then.
Just post the raw footage of you going just pausing for minutes and restarting and pausing.
I thought about it, but it was yeah. It was too cringe even for me. I mean, I know I've done a lot of crazy things on this channel, but like I looked at the raw footage. I said, "Oh, it could be interesting," but yeah, it was pretty awful.
Long pauses. Let's try this again. Just talking to yourself. Let's try this again.
But yeah, dude, yeah, now that I've finished the videos, I'm pretty happy that I've done them. I think the future ones will be easier just because
Well, you
like
have a theme, right? I mean, you had this theme that you wanted to make a series of videos about a certain topic, right?
yeah, I think part of it is that when you have a blank YouTube channel, there I don't know, there's some high expectations for okay, I go from blank to like with one video, I want that first video to be decent, and then it just becomes tough to publish. Now that I have two videos and I don't consider them very good, like it'll be easier for me to append because
Yeah, yeah.
the damage has already been
The
done.
damages have been done. I mean, they're like people like, Mr. Beast or whoever who just had like just hundreds of random gaming videos up, right? Like, I don't know if it was him or someone else, but like a lot of people's channels is, the first 100, 200 videos is just them like live streaming games or like doing something silly. And then they're like, oh yeah, like people actually kind of sort of watch this. And then they start building their brand and they just keep the old videos on or something, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think maybe I've seen too many videos where it's like how to start a YouTube channel. It's like, oh, you want to
Yeah.
stay on theme, blah blah blah. And it's
Oh,
just like,
no, no,
oh man,
no,
that's a
that's
lot of
over.
pressure.
No, that's over then. No, no, that's just over. You're buying like influencer guides or something.
Yeah. I think it's just easier to be organic and then
Yeah.
and if you get traction in a certain direction or you feel enthusiastic about a certain theme, then you can hit that harder. But you don't need the pressure and at the initial stages.
Yeah, man. Otherwise, I don't know what you're feeling. Oh man, your second one's already up. I see it. Man, it's funny
Yeah.
because you got your office setting and everything. It's so funny. It's like your office background.
Yeah, this is actually a different room. I
Yeah.
got kicked out. So
At
well,
night too. Wait, it's Sunday night?
Sunday night, yeah, other people are here. I'm here for fun, but I think other people are working.
Oh man, they're actually grinding, man. They're gonna bust in and take your spot.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't kick me. I misspoke, but they were already there. They were already at my favorite spot, so I had to pick a different.
Yeah, you gotta get out. So your second one is 3 minutes long.
That's right, dude. Yeah, better,
So
better.
like, is that I haven't seen that yet. So is that edited 3 minutes, or is that like you had like how did you decide on 3 minutes for that?
I didn't. I just, you know, I did Toastmasters for a brief period of time, and they have a portion of the meeting where you speak for 2 to 3 minutes uninterrupted,
Mhm.
and I would always go for like a minute 10 or a minute
Wait, this
20.
is Toastmasters?
Yeah,
Okay,
Toastmasters. Yeah.
when was this?
This was a few years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
What made you decide to do that?
Priscilla was actually interested in it, my
Oh,
wife,
uh-huh.
and I just tagged along. And that first meeting, it's held at Stanford.
Mm.
That first meeting, the the officers of the club who really organized the meeting, they did an incredible job, and it felt like a show. Like I was there just as a guest. I didn't really participate that first meeting, but they had a superhero theme, and people,
Wait, so
the
were these like working adults or are these college students or grad students?
It's a blend. Some are college students, and then you have some working professionals who just live close to Palo
Right,
Alto.
right, right. So it
Yeah.
wasn't all college students. It
But yeah,
wasn't just you crashing college
well,
students.
no, I mean, gosh, you make it sound so so creepy or something. No, I mean, this is a legit, a blend of people show up to these meetings, and I was there, and I was impressed by the first meeting, and then I went regularly for around a year.
Oh, wow. For like once a
Yeah,
week.
yeah. Once a week, yeah.
And then you have
But
to talk every week.
you had to, yeah, that's right. You talk for at least a few minutes every week.
Nice.
Yeah. But they would ask you a random question, right? Like, how do you feel about global warming, or something completely random.
Yeah.
And then even if you don't have an opinion, the idea is that you're just supposed to speak for 2 to 3 minutes continuously. But I would just I would talk, and then I would feel like I had a natural conclusion, and I would stop,
It
and
was
it'd be
only
like,
like a minute.
yeah, minute or minute 10 or whatever.
So what was the setting when you got up and talked? Like what was the like is it in front of a room? Is it just like in a circle? What's the like how scary is it?
Yeah, so when I was at the meeting, you're just sitting in the audience section of a classroom, and then
Okay.
someone at the front will be in charge of that portion of the meeting.
Uh-huh.
And then they would have a list of questions prepared. And
But
then
when
so
you
they
talk, do you get up to the front or do you sit in your seat
you
and
you
talk?
just stand up where you are.
Where you are, I see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They experimented a little bit with you
Uh,
going up to the
right,
front,
right,
but
right.
the standard was you just stand up where you are. And then it gets a little awkward because like there are people behind you. It's like, do I turn around?
It's like high school classrooms, They were just like you go down the line, you read part of the book or whatever, right?
That's right. That's right. I mean, reading part of the book is easier, right? Because it's right in front of you. But when you have to come up with your own words, it's a little more challenging.
Yeah, that's also
Uh,
kind of interesting. I don't know, it's interesting. It's kind of weird also because it's like random. It's almost like improv, right? It's like random topics instead of like, you know, if you did a Toastmasters and every time you came, you made one of these videos, right? You're like, all right, tell me 3 minutes about the topic you actually want to talk about. That'd be kind of cool, right?
yeah, yeah. And I think these interactions, you and me, that kind of replaced Toastmasters for me. I'm like, oh, I already get enough practice talking with Phil. I think I'm good. That was part of my thought process because yeah, you bring up a good point that if it's a question that you don't really care about, then you're just kind of, shooting the whatever for a minute, 2 minutes.
Kind of
And
weird. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of weird. It is a skill to talk about nothing and
Right,
sound
right.
like you're saying
It's like
something.
improv. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you can start with the question, but then slowly not answer the question, but
Kind of
just
like
be
politician
entertaining.
style. That's like politician
Yeah,
style
that's right.
debate answers. Yeah, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I think part of it was good practice. Yeah, and it was a social setting too, so it
Did
was
it
a lot of fun.
Priscilla do it together?
Yeah, yeah. We we did it for the same period of time.
About a year.
Yeah, about a year.
Nice. And is she doing a podcast now too?
No. I mean, I've asked her, but she has less interest in this type of thing than I do, I think.
So tell me about when you first thought about making some kind of video content. When was this thought first in your head?
Um, I mean, it's been a gradual process. I mean, for the Math Papa website, there are some tutorial videos that I've shot. But those are a little different because you're teaching someone how to do something very concrete, and so you don't feel like you're putting yourself out there. Like
and those are up. Those have been up for a while.
Yeah, those are up, and if I'm either teaching a mathematical concept or I'm just introducing you to the site and I'm helping you
like
kind of
like a walkthrough of the site.
A walkthrough,
Nice.
Yeah. So that feels very natural, and it doesn't feel very.
Is that on a YouTube channel or is that just on your server somewhere?
That's on a YouTube channel, yeah, a corporate YouTube channel.
Nice.
And like making the math content was fine, but I think by doing those videos, at some point I had a desire to expand beyond math. And
so when did you do those math videos? What year?
Maybe a few years ago.
Oh wow, so it was a while back.
It was a while back.
Before the podcast.
It was before, yeah. It was before the first videos were before the podcast. Yeah.
So maybe before I even did it, or around the time I started doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was intimidated by the process because you do a Camtasia tutorial and they teach you how to do all these like cutscenes or whatever, right? You have the intro slide and you establish your brand, blah blah blah. I'm like, wow, this is really overwhelming, And then what got me over the hump was just really lowering the quality bar, right? Just like, okay, something's better than nothing. And this is kind of intimidating, all this advice that I'm hearing, but let me just put something out there.
So how did you do the math? Was it a sketching thing or was it a...
Yeah. So I had a tablet, a Wacom tablet, and then I'd have an application on the Mac, something similar to MS Paint.
So it was like Khan Academy style.
Yeah. I'm not. It's tricky. Yeah, it is Khan Academy style, but it's tricky for me to write on the tablet and have it sync with the screen. Yeah.
Especially because it's not on the screen. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
That's right. So I'm excited about this new iPad software because it'll supposedly, I think it syncs to your laptop screen. So you could just like look at your tablet. If I understand the pitch correctly, you could, I mean, there's third-party software that does something similar, but I think Apple will have native the ability to mirror your laptop screen on your tablet, and then so you could write more naturally.
Nice.
Yeah, because with the tablet and you're doing Paint on your laptop screen, it takes some hand-eye coordination. And
it's when I had success with it, I had the Microsoft Surface tablet, right? This was 2014, 2015. I have a bunch of videos with that, and like it was nice because it was just like it was just like a laptop with a touch screen that you could. The cool thing is you could type on it, right? You could do stuff. It was just a Windows laptop, and you can write on the screen. I had some third-party software, it was free software, where you can just write over whatever's on your screen. So that was cool because you didn't just have a blank canvas, right? You could do the blank canvas, MS Paint style. You have Notepad, so it's called like, I don't know, Microsoft Notes or whatever. That was cool because you really nice tablet, pressure sensitive. But then the really cool thing I really liked was being able to show your whole screen if you're doing coding or if you're displaying a website and stuff. Then you can just use the ink to draw over it and draw circles or whatever and then narrate. And I thought that was really cool.
Do you still use that Surface?
I don't have it. I left it in Rochester, so I don't have it with me. I can just buy it.
Okay.
It's 2019. If I really want it, I'll buy a new one, but I haven't had the desire to yet.
If you were to shoot a similar video, do you think you would use the Surface or?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I haven't done it for so many years, right? So I haven't felt the the desire to. But yeah, so I first got those Wacom tablets a long time ago in grad school. I play with one. Like I got one of those cheap little ones, and they're just terrible because they're tiny, right? So you try to write on it,
Yeah.
and it's like it's really hard to coordinate, right? Because it's like your hand is moving this little, and the screen is big. You're like, oh, this is stupid. And I think I got some bigger ones, but I never got them working for me because of the fact that it's indirect, right? Like you have to just write on the screen. Like it's just so much easier.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm hoping. I mean, you know, the Surface might actually be cheaper than it to get set up with the extra equipment for the Apple. I a part of me prefers to stay with Apple, but yeah, I get the appeal of just getting a Surface and
Yeah, I mean that was real. And then there's like this desktop Surface thing too, like the giant one, right? Like it's a giant. It's like a 27-inch. It's a desktop computer, and then you can tilt it, and then you can draw on it.
Yeah, you've used that too?
I just saw it in the store. I haven't bought one.
Oh, okay.
So it's like a 27-inch iMac basically, except then it looks like an iMac, and then you can tilt it, and then you can just draw on it.
That's pretty cool.
So that's
Yeah.
like pretty hardcore. I mean, that's like huge.
Do you have any idea how expensive it is?
I don't know, but I mean, it's supposed to be good. But yeah, I haven't tried it in detail. But yeah, I mean, I haven't had a desire to make those ink sketch videos just because I don't have a machine. Like, I'm sure if I had a thing like that, I would make more of those. But like, again, like I'm pretty happy doing these more experiential things. Like, I don't have a strong desire to make these drawing-based tutorials at this point.
Mm-hmm. I vaguely remember, but what was the content of your tutorial?
I had a few where I was just stepping through code, right? There was like web development. There's a few web development ones. There's one where I was like just walking through how Python works in detail. And it was just I wrote a bunch of code and then I just like drew over it and like or like ran stuff in the terminal and then like drew over it or whatever. Or like if you're doing a web app, you can like display the browser and you can like circle the parts on it and stuff. So it felt really natural. I mean, the cool thing about that is like it's basically like doing a screencast, but like a screencast plus plus, right? Because with the screencast, you can type and then you can use your mouse to like hover over stuff and be like, look at this. But like, the cool thing with that is that it's like I have my laptop, my Surface, so I can just type. I can use the mouse if I want. But then anytime I'm like, oh, I want to show them this, I just grab the pen, I just like circle it, and I just like emphasize it and stuff. And sometimes with handwrite, but then the handwriting is kind of messy. But you can circle and emphasize. So it felt extremely natural because you can do all the typing and computer stuff, and you can do the drawing right over it, which is much more, felt much more natural than having to go on a blank canvas or something. That's because the kind of canvas is like blank, right? It's just drawing.
Yeah. Dang, dude, yeah, you're selling me on the Surface because I mean that's exactly the experience that I want.
Selling the Surface, man, I get an affiliate link or something. Man, it's all just everything sponsored by something, man. Can't trust anybody anymore on YouTube.
Do you think you'll make it? Is there similar content that you want to push now?
Not really, because I'm kind of lazy. Not really because I'm lazy. No, well, because I feel like, if you're doing sketch-based content, like, I feel like there's a lot of good stuff out there. I'm not going to make math videos, right? I'm not going to make like, theoretical CS videos where you have to draw a bunch of diagrams. And I'm not going to do like 3 blue, 1 brown or whatever. That's like, crazy math stuff. Like, I'm like, that's not what I do, right?
Yeah.
So I don't really have at most, I sometimes would do a screencast thing and then I would just like talk. I would record myself Camtasia doing something and then I would like talk over with little mini, the webcam and like, that's fine.
Oh, okay. So you still had a webcam at some points in those videos?
Oh, no, those I didn't have webcam. I don't think I did.
Oh,
I just did pure screen. Yeah, I didn't care about the webcam for those.
Okay. Yeah. Cool, dude. Man, I gotta make some videos like that too.
So tell me about this series you want to make. I mean, the talking head one. I mean, this is the one that you're on 2. You're on number 2.
Well, I think in general, I'm excited by the idea of, how people say like the internet is this wonderful place because there's so much information available and you could educate yourself and so on, right? Like, I really believe in that vision, but I think a lot of people, they don't really know where to look.
Yeah.
Like there's that first layer, right? Like if you go on Amazon, you're gonna see the bestsellers, or
Yep.
you know, if you go on Google and you're not really skilled with what you
Yeah, it's
type
hard.
into the search, it's
Well, and
really
also
tough
there's a
to.
lot of bad stuff out there too. I mean, there's just a lot of really bad stuff because, the stuff that's obvious to search for, they're probably paid ads or like, sponsored things or like, shady, whatever keywords you're searching for, there's like shady sites want to come on top, right?
Yeah, yeah,
There's that
and
too.
yeah, there's that too. I mean, I just feel like over the past year, I've learned. I've learned a lot. Like I feel like the me from a year ago, I feel like I would have so much to say to that person in terms
Mm.
of all the interesting stuff I've read and all the videos that I've seen. And the the tough thing is that I've always had this urge. I've always been curious, but I didn't really know how to find content that I would find interesting. You ever have that experience? I mean, I think it's harder these days, but in the old days, you almost feel like you've reached the edges of the internet. Like you just like run out of things to search for. I mean, you're limited by what you could think of, right? But like,
Right, right.
it's like sometimes I'd be bored and I just have my computer and I try to entertain myself, and I would hit the same videos and the same pages over and over again
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
didn't really have a diverse I didn't really have a map of what was available so that I could encounter something that I actually felt was interesting. Um, there's this idea like the unknown knowns, right? I don't
Yeah.
know what would interest you.
So it's interesting to me that you're thinking about you of 1 year ago, right? I mean, that's already, that's already you're, in your mid 30s, right? I mean, like you're already pretty sophisticated and experienced by that. It's not like you of 20 years ago, right? So what's with this 1 year thing? I mean, like
Yeah, yeah. I
what
mean,
changed in the past year?
well, one thing was I read the Charlie Munger's book, Poor Charlie's Almanac, and like it talks about business and it talks about psychology, and it had a lot of interesting stuff. But the I think the meta lesson I learned was that wow, I have pretty big gaps in my knowledge in topics that I'm interested in. Like I understand like there's no way you're gonna learn everything in the world, but like if there's something that's in your sweet spot, or there are certain things that you feel like you know better than other subjects, right? And if you encounter relatively big gaps in your knowledge and what you consider to be sweet spot, to me, that's super eye-opening. It's like, wow, there's certain business concepts I hadn't even I mean, I had heard stuff in the past that kind of touched on similar issues, but I felt reading that Munger book, I felt really ignorant reading it because my mind was blown
Mm.
on a few occasions, and I just felt like, yeah, I mean, a thought similar to what you said. It's like, wow, I'm in my 30s, and like I'm not supposed to have these explosions, but like like when you're 15 and you learn about string theory, you're like, whoa, or you learn about relativity, you're like, whoa, or calculus, right? And then at some point, those
Start getting jaded. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you don't encounter these mind shaking theories on as regular of a basis. But then roughly a year ago, I read this Munger book and I just said, "Wow, okay, now I get why people are excited about Warren Buffett. And now I get
Mm.
why like investing can be seen as an interesting field." Um, I, I think, yeah, it just that meta lesson that like it got me excited about reading. It got me excited about trying to like proactively learn more and just um it made me aware that I still had a long way to go, I guess.
Wow, that's pretty profound. So, like, how did you think about in the past year or so, what efforts have you made to carve out the time to learn stuff? Given that you got to grind a lot in your work, when do you carve that out, and do you feel self-motivated enough, or you're like, oh, I'm just tired, I don't want to do it, like, or do you feel pretty pumped and you actually do spend that time deeply learning outside of your work?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's at night that I and you bring up a good point that after the workday you're tired,
Yeah.
and that that for a long time was a barrier for me it's like, oh wow, I just programmed for 8 hours and now I'm
Yeah.
gonna read this dense book. Um, I mean, it sounds daunting, but what got me over the hump was I I give myself permission to skim books and I give myself permission to quit books.
Mm,
So I think that's really helped. I remember like wasting a lot of time on yahoo.com or similar sites because I had this mindset where it's like, okay, I'm I'm spent basically mentally.
right.
And so let me just wind down before I go to sleep.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So you would wind now you're able to wind down reading these books.
yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, and I think, I mean, I'm not reading Wealth of Nations or anything, right? Like there are certain books that are like the great works. They're pretty dense, right? And I cannot, you know, like that's like Origin of Species or something like that's beyond what I can read at 8 p.m. on a typical workday. But the but popular books that you find on Amazon, they're not that dense.
That's true. Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, I see what you mean. Like, it's funny because we talked several times about books, and I always used to talk about how I don't read books, but I've been trying to read more books lately. Maybe it's influenced by you. I think part of it is just that like I'm tired of just reading random clickbait, right? I'm just like, it's not like that engaging to me anymore. Just like random articles on stuff, even like articles that seem good. You're like, okay, that was 2,000 words. I read it. Like that was cool, but whatever, right? But like I'm appreciating if you find good books you're into, then like there's a bigger picture, right? There's like you can see the author's perspective and like they have more. I mean, it's just so cliche, but they have more room to go into it, right?
Yeah.
I usually can like switch between probably up to two books at once. If I get bored with one, I kind of always have two kind of going on. But I don't like spend a ton of time reading, right? So like, and I don't read a ton at night either. So like sometimes in the middle of the day I would read, but like my wind down, I still don't think would read books for wind down yet. I think I'm still just on YouTube or something.
Yeah, but your YouTube content's pretty interesting too. And
That's true. I think the YouTube content
yeah.
is more stimulating. Yeah, it's true. I don't ever watch like clickbait news on YouTube, right? Like I don't watch like, news clips or anything or like whatever, right? It's always like I think the YouTube stuff, yeah, I actually do view a lot of the YouTube stuff I watch. They do feel like books in the sense of like I watch a lot of stuff about filmmaking, about photography, about video editing, about that kind of stuff. And like they feel like I feel like I'm getting a sense of like the craft, right, by doing that, right? And it's like it's not like I'm gonna be a filmmaker or whatever, but like it's sort of like you with business, right? It's like I've always been into that stuff and I'd like to just dive in more and more. And like those things there aren't books on, right? It's actually about video, right? It's about video format. It's not about like here, read a camera book or whatever, right?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, I at that nighttime period, I read a lot, but I also watch YouTube a lot. I consider YouTube to be very educational. You had this argument like, oh, videos versus books. Like,
Yeah.
it's not one doesn't quite dominate the other, and I agree. I think videos serve a purpose. I think like if you hear a famous business person talk,
Mm-hmm.
I think another thing I like to do is if I'm reading a book, sometimes I'll listen to the author speak for a little bit, and then I'll read the book.
Yeah, that
And
gets
then
you immersed.
it emotionally it kind of hits. It feels more like a conversation if I
Yeah.
know what the author's voice sounds like.
Yeah, and also like what their other stuff is. So the latest thing I've been reading, I finished like both books by this guy, this game designer, Jordan Mechner, and he wrote basically his journals, right? His just personal journals throughout two major games. So there's one called Karateka, which is like a karate, one of the first like fighting, Street Fighter type games for the Apple II. It was released in 1984, around when we were born. And so that first journal is like 82 to 85. So it was basically him in college. Like he was a college student at Yale and he made this game, mostly during summer breaks and winter breaks. But during the school year, he would just talk about, skipping class or like failing his test because he was just grinding on his Apple II like nonstop. and like, missing out on the social life and stuff. He's like, what am I doing? Why am I just obsessed with this game? And then like it ends with him like getting the game published, and it, like the ending to that journal was, I think, his senior year of college. Like in the middle of his senior year, it's gotten published, and then it started rising in the charts, and it hit like #1 on like bestseller and stuff. And like then he knew it was on to something big. And then he, then the second book starts in his senior year of college, and that's when he started working on Prince of Persia, which Prince of Persia got to be very, very popular, which is his second published game. So the second book covers 85 to 92 or 93, something, and that covers the Prince of Persia development, and then also a lot of stuff that happened afterwards, because trying to make a sequel, and like he had ambitions to try to make films and stuff, and like dealing with the business side of like publishing games and everything. And so like reading both of those together was, it was like 10 really critical years of his life, right? 82 to 92 or something. It's just like phenomenal. And I was like, man, what did we do for 10 years? Right? It was great because it was just his raw journals. And because it was so raw, he would just reference a lot of events and a lot of things, right? Some of the stuff we'd heard of, but they were just like historical events, right? Elections, or like, a San Francisco earthquake, or like stuff about the video game industry that I kind of knew about. Like there's like a recession and a crash in the video game industry. And then, arcade games are going down, and then, different kinds of personal computers are competing. So it was cool because in the narrative he's talking about in the book, it was like, that was what was really happening to him, right? He was noticing trends and, hearing buzz about PCs and Apples and Commodore 64 and Atari and all these different brands competing. And like, but there was also a bunch of jargon he used about the games of the day or the technologies. So like, as I was reading that, I would just like sometimes just stop and like look it up online and like read on Wikipedia about like whatever technologies. And like that really gave it kind of a richness, right? And I would watch some YouTube videos of like those games themselves, right? The original versions of the games, or like newer versions people made and stuff. So like, yeah, there's something about like having a book anchor this thing, and then you can kind of explore all around it, which I think is cool.
Yeah. I read the Prince of Persia one on your recommendation, and yeah, it just, well, one thing that hit me was like all this time is flying while he's, journaling. I'm just like, wow, like, he's getting older, right? And like his life while he's making the game is relatively constant. And I'm just like, wow, what if this game isn't a success,
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It's such a huge, you spend half your 20s, say, or more on if the project fails, it just, I don't know. Yeah, it's such a big risk. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, you could have done the Math Papa Diaries. You should read the other one actually. Did you finish the Prince of Persia one?
Yeah.
Yeah, you should just buy the other one, read the other one, because like it's cool because it's like exactly the prequel, right? Like it exactly, the Prince of Persia one starts exactly where the other one left off, because it's just all his journals. He just cut it up.
Yeah. Did they feel different, the two works?
It was similar, but I actually really liked the first one, because it was like it felt a lot more pure, right? Because he was just a college student, right? Because like the Prince of Persia, a lot of it dealt with the business side, right? A lot of it was like about business and like kind of his gripes with like the software companies and ups and downs and stuff. But the other one was like he was just like a college student, right? So it was like, and it was very contained. Like you can kind of see that it was like 3 years of college, right? You could see the summer breaks and the spring breaks and the winter break, and like him trying to balance his social life with like, the games, and like his ambitions of wanting to, do film and do other stuff. I thought it was really good because he was in college during that whole time. So I think you could relate.
Yeah. I mean, I really like this idea of you're in this groove, kind of working on this long-term project, and you have a rhythm, and you have a sense of where you want to take it, and like it's, as a programmer, I could really relate. Do you have a similar experience where, like, with the Python tutor or something, where you felt you lived something similar?
I don't know if it was that. I don't know if it was that extreme, but it was, it was shorter lived, certainly. Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of other stuff going on. Yeah, I guess in that way, I had that experience for like a few months at a time or something, but not like, not like years. Yeah, it wasn't like that. I mean, I didn't give up everything for that,
Okay.
right? It wasn't.
Yeah.
I don't want to be poor.
I could relate because I mean, when I was working on stuff, you constantly push the changes, but there's still a delayed, like just because the new version of the site say is better, you don't necessarily get the feedback instantly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like that's why part of it is like, it's interesting because part of it is like a craftsmanship thing, right? It's like it's you wanting to do a good job because you know that you want to do the best job you can. But then the other part is like, does that actually even matter to users, right? So it's like this tension. And I think the game design is interesting, especially the one person show, this kind of N equals one indie game developers, because like it's your artistic vision you're realizing, but then, there are people talking about you have people play testing it, people giving you suggestions, and you're like, you know, should you incorporate those suggestions, right? Because some of it might actually be good, right? And some of it might not. So, you know, I guess I did relate in that sense of like, having developed some significant piece of software by yourself, thinking about what feedback to take versus not, right? Like how, on one hand, you can be very user focused. On the other hand, you're like, this is my own work. Screw this. I'm just doing it the way I want, right?
Yeah.
And there's this tension because I think a lot of great works is because one person said, this is what I'm doing and that's my vision. But then, if you're making a mass consumer product, by definition, people need to be able to use it somehow. So you need to somehow make that compromise, right?
Yeah. When you were building your stuff, did you have what was the end product pretty similar to the initial vision?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay.
Because I always kept the vision really simple just because I didn't have a lot of time to work on stuff. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I really avoided feature creep or whatever because I just didn't have a lot of time.
Okay. But did anyone give you feedback where you said, like, was anything super tempting to shift the vision or?
Not really. I mean, there's like feedback as like, it would be great to add stuff, right? So like adding stuff, I'm like, all right, I don't have time to add stuff. Yes. But not like, oh, why don't you do this completely differently?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I never really felt that.
Yeah.
But I haven't felt that for years, man. Yes, I haven't related to that for years.
Oh man, yeah. I guess it's a little. Those feelings are more recent for me, maybe, than they are for you.
Deep in the grind.
Hey Phil, do you know the game Stardew Valley?
I've heard of it, but I'm not up to the game. Is this a one-person thing too?
It's a one-person thing. It was over a span of like 4 to 5 years.
Wow, yeah, real passion.
And it had this like huge, this guy, he's being an usher at movie theaters and just trying to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And he releases it and like instantly like multi-millionaire, right?
Wow.
It's just and the parents are like, "Oh, what are you doing?" Like there's a lot of doubt creeping in because he had no experience prior to making the game, right? Like he was truly an outsider, and to persist and to pull it off is pretty cool. But yeah, I think what keeps you going, because like 4 years or 5 years, it sounds like a long time, but I think internally you have a vision of what you're trying to make, and it's not done yet, and there's a concrete next step you could take, and I think that loop that could keep you going for a very long time.
I mean, you should read his other book, the earlier book, because like he had a bunch of experience building games before. Like, I mean, they didn't get published. I mean, he submitted games and stuff. So like, it wasn't like, oh, this was, when by the time he started on Prince of Persia, it wasn't like, oh, I'm just some guy who's just gonna make a thing, right? Like he was already coming off of a #1 hit game, basically with a deal to do another game,
Okay.
Because like he was able to do that because of the prior book, right? So, and then before that, like in his earlier in college, he was making other games and submitting them, and they weren't getting published, right? Or he actually did some contract gigs to just like do programming for other people. So like it wasn't like he was just totally just came out of nowhere and made a game, right?
Okay. Because this other guy, the Stardew Valley guy, it was more of a kind of came out of nowhere.
Just came out of nowhere. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's wild.
But yeah, I'll read it because the Prince of Persia one was really good.
Nice, yeah. I think the other one you'll really like because it's the same style. You can just flip through it.
Did you ever grind in undergrad, like a project of
like a thing? I I mean, it's funny. I was thinking about this randomly the other day, but so my master's thesis project, which I worked on for like 2.5 years. I mean, like that was a long time, right? Because I was
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah.
undergrad for 5 years, well, undergrad master for 5 years, and for 2.5 years, I grinded on this one piece of code. I'm like, that's like half my college time. Like, holy crap, that's a long time. And like it was part of my research project, but like, I mean, I have a whole master's thesis on it and stuff for you, for the two people who want to read it. But like, it was, I mean, basically it was a tool to plug into this thing called Daikon, which is, what our with my master's advisor, that was like his main project, right? It was his like it was like his version of Klee, right? It was like his main project that a bunch of people, the grad students, put plugins onto, essentially. So my goal was to write a thing that would allow this tool to analyze programs that were C and C++ programs. And so I built it off of this thing called Valgrind, which is a basically a tool that runs on Linux that you just run C and C++ programs through it, and like instruments the code, and it prints out a bunch of debugging information about memory and stuff while it's running. It's basically like a memory debugger. So I basically wrote an extension to this Valgrind tool that would. It's funny now that I think back. I think I was reminded a few years ago, like the whole like I think the reason why I thought about doing the Python tutor was because of this thing I did in undergrad, because it essentially does the same thing, except it's for C and C++ code. It basically runs the code at every step. It would just show you all the values like at runtime.
Mm.
So like every time you're stepping through your code, it will show you all the variables that are in scope and all the stack frames and all the like pointers and stuff, and it'll follow the pointer. So it'll like show you here's a linked list and here's an array or whatever. And that data was all just packaged up. And then that data was sent to this Daikon tool. And the goal of the Daikon tool was it was supposed to be language independent. So like you would have a front end for each language. So I made the C and C++ one. The Java one was the original one. That was the one that I guess we had a research scientist who maintained. And that was like the main one, because Java and C and C++ were like the big ones back then. And then there are people made like some random ones for like Perl or Python or whatever, like small things. But the idea is that you would run code written in a language, you would print out all the values at every point in execution, and you shove it into this tool. And what this tool does is that it does a, a kind of machine learning like thing on it. And it tries to tell you what like properties about your program hold true at certain points of your code. So like if you're calling a function 100 times, for example, if you're calling a function 100 times and you're always seeing positive values, then like a possible property is, these inputs are always positive. And then you can show it to people and be like, oh, that's actually true. Like I should add that as a test case or an assertion. Or like, oh, this is actually surprising. Like I didn't realize that like the range of this thing was so big. Maybe there's a bug in my code. Like I never knew this could be negative. How come it's negative? So anyway, so what I worked on for those 2.5 years is building the C and C++ front end. And it was just a tremendous amount of grinding. Like it was like tremendous, because like C and C++ are really hard to work with. And like it was just like nonstop grinding, but it was like a very well set problem. And I would just build my thing. I had a grad student who would help me out on it because he was really good at like Linux and C and C++. But basically my problem is like I didn't even know how it would be used by the tool, by the Daikon tool. Like I didn't even care. I didn't even know or care. My job was to make this thing just work well. So it reduced to a really well set problem, which is we just had a bunch of test cases and we just kept, I mean, I think the code is still online on GitHub somewhere, but like we just made up a bunch of test cases, right? Like we would just try to run it through like real programs, right? Like we would analyze real programs and see where it failed, and then try to isolate the test case and be like, oh, we need to handle like this like triply nested list or whatever thing. So it's just added as a test case. So I got really good at writing just like a ton of little test cases, and all those test cases just exercise all sorts of weird stuff in C, right? Or C++, like every single construct you can think of. And my goal was to just get my tool to work on everything. So when I got to work on a test case, I would just add like a regression test, right? I would add the output to the test suite, so that as I kept programming, like the test suite just kept growing. And then every day I would just run the test suite to make sure everything still worked, right? So I would keep improving it or adding new features. And I got into a flow that way. And like by the end, it like worked like pretty well, right? Like I had a bunch of tests and stuff, except like it wasn't really for any real purpose, right? Because like it wasn't like anyone was going to actually use this.
Yeah, but I could really relate that
You
it's
just
a
really feel it.
well-defined
Yeah,
problem. Yeah.
it's very well defined.
Well-defined problem, measurable progress,
Yeah.
and pretty challenging.
Yeah, it
And
was
like,
challenging, and I felt like I was learning, right? It was cool because I was like,
yeah,
oh, I'm learning all this stuff about C and C++ because I'm like, and then I had a grad student who would help me with it, like some weird debugging things. I felt like it wasn't a lot of like algorithmic learning, right? It wasn't like I was learning algorithm. It was a lot of systems type learning, a lot of programming languages, a lot of testing about corner cases. So I felt like I got much better as a programmer by doing that. And then years later, like 6 or 7 years later, um, when I was doing the Python tutor, it was a very similar thing, right? Like, except it was Python, and you were trying to run the debugger and just print out all the values. This time you're trying to visualize it, but still, before you can visualize it, you need to have the execution trace, right? So again, I mean, I have the Python. I mean, there's like a bazillion tests, right? I just like there. I think I should probably go on GitHub and try to find the test suite. Um,
yeah.
but like, there's just like a bazillion tests, and those tests are made because I, found some bug or. And the cool thing about the Python do is that since people actually use it and they reported bugs early on, I have just like a bazillion tests about it. Where the heck are my tests? Hold on, I don't even know where they are. Are these backend? Yeah, this is backend. I have a bunch here. Here's a bunch of the .txt files, the test files. Oh shoot, where the heck's the chat? This is the Python tutor ones. Yeah, so a lot of those, all the txt files are just Python files that are just tests. Do I have new ones? I haven't ran these in years. And then I have other languages too, and I have tests. And so to bring this full circle, I don't know why. Oh, you asked about you asked about whether I had a grind. So
Yeah.
this full circle, this is why it's really cool. So to bring this full circle, years after I did the Python tutor, I decided to make a C and C++ backend for it. So I decided to try to work on C and C++. So I basically I didn't really use the code for a master thesis, but I used the same platform and the same ideas. And I built it off of the same tool. So that was like my ultimate redeemer because like
Wow.
used what I did for my master's in 2005 or whatever. But like it was 2015 and like a bunch of people use the C and C++ visualizer. So like all that actually came back 10 years later and people actually use that now, right?
That's amazing, dude.
These are the tests for the C and C++ backend. And it's funny because a bunch of those tests came from my master's thesis. This the ultimate redeemer, right? Like all these, yeah, actually, a lot of these tests, yeah, holy crap. Yeah, a lot of these tests are literally from 10 years ago for my master's thesis. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Like the ultimate
for your master. Yeah. What's that, Phil?
Yeah, that was like the ultimate redeemer. I just thought about that.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to ask, for your master's thesis, if you had 3 months less or 6 months less, like, would you have been able to reach a conclusion?
Probably, yeah. I mean, like, cause toward the end, I wasn't like working super hard. I mean, yeah,
Okay.
probably would have been fine. Like a lot of the hard work was done early on, and then it was just, yeah, the last year was just refining it. Because my last year I was applying to grad schools and like finishing up and stuff. So like yeah, the last year, no, we actually did actually come out of this because one of the grad students, he was Martin Renard's student. He was like the only person who used this janky thing I wrote because he actually used that as part of like some experiment for one of his papers. And like I was actually a co-author on his paper that he published. And I was a co-author because I worked with him on like getting my janky thing to work on his code.
Oh, nice, dude. So where'd that get submitted?
That was at ISTA. That was at the same conference where I published my first paper also. That first year I had a first author paper and then his paper, a bunch of us were like, second or third or whatever authors on.
Oh man. And
that was a
yeah.
that was a redeemer. And also like, it was a real redeemer in that like my master's was funded by this DARPA grant. And like now in retrospect, it makes sense. Like, why do they have me work on this so hard? It makes sense because the part of this DARPA grant was that to show that this sort of analysis would work on C and C++ programs. So actually, like my master's work was actually pretty essential for that grant.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, so I was the cog in the machine there. I didn't know at the time, but I was just like happily working on this. Well, yeah, actually that was actually pretty vital for the grant because we actually had the DARPA people come and we actually like demoed it to them and stuff.
That's awesome. And what were your thoughts immediately after you finished it? Were you proud, or like did you think it was super useful, or what
Yeah, I
was
mean, I didn't think it was super useful, but
okay?
I thought it was like a substantive work, right? I thought I was like, yeah, I was proud in the sense I'm like, okay, like I did a thing that like this seems pretty substantive. Yeah, I can link you to my master's thesis. And my master's thesis got some award too, which is pretty cool. But those are so arbitrary. I got like I don't know, I got like $1,000 or something for that. I was like, oh yeah, it's big money. But yeah, I'll show you the math. You can just read this offline. But yeah, I was like, yeah, I was pretty proud of it. I like wrote it up well, because based on this framework, we wrote like papers off of it. Like we did some analysis and we actually like there was a self-contained paper in this that was so the framework I built was just most of the time grinding, and then we did some like analysis and we wrote a paper off it. So the framework itself was never published, but the analysis part, which is like the last chapter, was actually published.
Oh wow, that's
So I
pretty
did get
cool,
a
dude.
pub out of it. Shoot, man. That was my first publication. Yeah, that was my first author publication.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds successful. Redeemer to me implies that it felt like a failure, but then it came through in the end. But this is like a almost like a cherry on top, right?
Yeah, the Python tutor integration. Yeah, that was like 10 years later. I was like, holy crap, I'm within striking range of doing this thing for C and C++. And like the C and C++ on Python tutor is like decently used, but I haven't refined a lot just because there's a lot of noise and I don't have time. But like it works. It just, there's limitations, but it works.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah.
It actually has a
Is
lot
it?
of the same
Yeah.
limitations as the original tool. So I mean, which
Oh,
yeah.
Hans, what are the nature of those limitations? Like, is it possible with more grinding or to overcome?
It may be a lot harder just because of the information the tool provides. So like I get one example, I think I have it listed somewhere. Like one example is like if you're passing like if you have like foo a or whatever, you're passing a into the function. You know how
Uh,
like inside the function you can say a plus equals 5. You can modify a, right?
okay, okay,
Because when
uh-huh.
you pass the thing in, that a is just a local variable. But like
Yeah.
for some reason this tool like it just snapshots the value when you enter the function. So when you modify a inside the function, it
Uh,
doesn't show it being modified.
oh,
So
okay, okay.
parameters, it doesn't show their modification. So like the hack is you just assign it to another local variable. So it's like the hack is you say, local a equals a, and then you can change local a or something. But
I see, I see.
yeah, so it's like, it's stuff like that like there's like a few little things. Or like it doesn't show the return value. Like getting the return value is a grind, like literally a grind for this. So like it doesn't show like return values. So if you want to visualize the return value, you have to say like whatever return value equals that and then return that, right? You have to assign it to a local variable first and then return it. If you just say
Mm-hmm.
return blah, it won't show that blah you're returning.
Yeah, yeah,
So like
yeah.
little things you can just work around by just adding stuff to your code. But
Oh, okay. That's cool, dude. Nice.
shoot, man, we all have redeemers. But yeah, I didn't even think about that until you mentioned it. But yeah, I haven't thought about code stuff in a while.
So that grind for your master's thesis, did you have a regular time when you did it? Or
Oh,
how
when I
was the grind
grinded?
like?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, like now I was just thinking about that. Like I just grind on that thing all the time. Like it's like the game, right? Like it was funny because I was like, why am I doing this? Like there's no like monetary incentive or and I was like, it's not like this is my thing that I'm gonna like turn into my whatever. I mean, it was my thing, but it was part of this research project, right? It was very limited. It was not like I was making a game, right? It was very limited scope. But yeah, I would just because by the end of my undergrad and grad school, I didn't have many classes. So like I just would spend whatever free time I had, I just grind on that. Like at night, I would just stay in the lab or go to like computer clusters, or sometimes I would just grind at home in my room on it because like it was so well defined. Right? I'm just like, oh, I need to like get this thing to work. I'm trying to get this part to work. Let's just keep hacking on it and try to get to work.
That's amazing, dude. It was that engaging.
Yeah, it was that engaging. And I'm
Uh,
thinking back, I'm like, it seems so silly, but it was like, yeah, it was that engaging. Like I would just because back then I used to night grind a lot, and like I was just really, really engaged. Yeah,
That's awesome.
and
I
I
mean, because
guess
I think for a lot of projects, yeah.
yeah, sorry, like that was really pure. I remember because I wasn't like I'm like, oh man, like what is the minimum I can grind so I can get a paper published out of this? Right? I didn't care about the papers part really, right?
Oh,
Because this was like for my master's. I mean, I was applying to grad schools. I mean, it would have been great to have paper stuff, but it wasn't really on the radar. Like we submitted some stuff, but I wasn't like thinking in paper mode, right? Whereas like the
yeah.
grad school grind, like especially in the first part of grad school, that was like the Klee grind was really painful because like it was like so much work. But then I'm just like, I don't want to just do this intrinsically. I don't find pleasure in doing the Klee grind intrinsically. I need to like Klee grind so I can like submit papers, right? But like none of the papers ever got out and stuff. So like it was really different than undergrad because undergrad I was just, and I did some other projects in undergrad too where I didn't care about papers. I was like, man, I'm just gonna like work on this thing or build this thing. This is so much fun. But then as soon as like grad school hit, it's like, okay, I know that the program I'm doing, the whole point is to publish papers. What am I supposed to do? Like, how much am I supposed to code? How much was to try to publish a paper? It just made it not fun.
Oh, well, was the shape of the technical problem different too? Like, could you ever approach Klee in a pure way, or was there something that didn't allow that?
I think it was just hard because like it was just so entangled in a lot of stuff. And yeah, I think it was just really hard. And it was just too much to grasp my mind around too. So
Oh,
I had a
okay,
lot
okay.
more success, obviously, later in grad school where I could really scope out my own thing a lot more concretely. And I had much more experience then. Um, but that was the undergrad grind.
That's awesome. Yeah, I completely relate to this zone where, you know, it's you have enough momentum where you have this consistent grind, right? I think when you're starting a project, there's a little bit of an on-ramp, but then once you hit that period of time where you're just making consistent progress, it's so good. And like that Prince of Persia, I felt similar. It felt like a pure grind. I mean, even you mentioned that the undergrad grind was more pure, but like the Prince of Persia one still felt it when I read it. It sounded similar to
Yeah.
what was described.
Well, I think my own undergrad grind was pure in the sense of it was well defined, and I also like enjoyed being in college then too, right? So I liked, I didn't have like a super prolific social life, but I liked, I could grind, but then I also had friends around and stuff, and like they were all working and stuff, and we'd go out on Friday and Saturday. So like I felt like life was good then, right? It was
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that was like a good period. You're in college, you're socializing, and then you had something to really sink your teeth into
yeah,
as
yeah.
well, right? So it felt meaningful. But then like grad school just like was a whole 180, right? I was like, oh my God.
What was the difference? Just the social part?
Yeah, both the social part and the like, the grind was not as pure anymore because it's like, from day one you're indoctrinated as grad students. Like papers are the only thing that matters, right? It's all about papers, papers, papers. Like your code doesn't matter, right?
Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think my first year in grad school was similar to your undergrad, where like it didn't hit me until year 2 or 3 that like, oh shoot, like papers matter. Like I gotta I gotta like intentionally work on making papers. Like I was kind of more of in a pure grind mode. Like I had in my mind less pressure until like a year or two into it. But
Until
you
reality hit.
yeah, yeah, but you from the beginning, you kind of like a business only type of
Yeah,
mindset. So,
I guess
okay.
so. And like that might have been to my detriment, right? It's like it might have been to my detriment to have that, but whatever.
That's that. Well, it turned out well, so that's
Yeah,
pretty
many
cool.
years later, a long road. All right, any last thoughts? I mean, let's circle it back to the video thing. What are the last thoughts about the making content stuff?
I mean, I'm excited to make more. I think talking with you after I did the solo video, I'm like, oh, okay. Like maybe producing a solo video could feel more like a conversation. I'll see whether that gets me over this because I felt even today when I recorded the solo video, I felt a little inhibited. But if I could carry some of this enthusiasm from our conversation into, when I'm recording a solo one, maybe I don't need 11 takes to get something that I can
Yeah.
publish, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, because I'm just thinking like all these excerpts, I could make we could make so many 3-minute excerpts from all your videos so far, and there's like gold, right? And it's like, how can you replicate that just by yourself? Because you clearly said those things for 3 minutes.
Well, I think in this setting, since you're asking the question, I know at least one person cares about the answer. When I'm soloing it, like I came up with the question, right? So I'm like, is there at least one other person who cares about this? I have less confidence in that setting, but maybe I'll figure out a way to carry this over.
Yeah, but I feel like the things you want to make, like these are pretty general questions. It's not like, oh, what was at the bottom of my laundry basket? Clearly no one else cares, right? But like these are pretty big life and career questions. I feel like, by definition, people will care.
Yeah. All right, yeah. I'm gonna make more, and hopefully I'll report next time that they were a lot easier to make.
Yeah, man, you can't do too many takes. You just gotta grind it out.
Sounds good, man.
All right, okay, I'm gonna hit the stop record button. Okay, ready? And stop record.